Eric Pace was recently named principal in the middle of the year, and he's certainly had an auspicious beginning. I think most of his time as principal has been remote. so it's been a very challenging time, but we're really excited to have a quality of leadership in Mr. Pace. He has big shoes to fill or follow. Pat Watson became the superintendent in the Bloomfield Hills School District, and Mr. Pace did an excellent job in presenting his leadership capacity and skills through the selection process, and we're really excited to have him on board. And Eric is going to talk today with his students, and they're going to talk more about the program, but we were going to have this portrait of a graduate presentation, and we still are, but it's in very different kind of a format. And the schooling is in a different format, so he can give us, as the students can, some insights on what it's like to be a student at West Bloomfield High School, and maybe especially during these unusual times for schooling. So at this point, I am going to turn the program over to Mr. Pace, and Mr. Pace, you can introduce the student panels and yourself further, okay? Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Dr. Hill. I'm Eric Pace, West Bloomfield High School principal. I've been principal for just over 2 months, just a couple days over 2 months. So as you can imagine, it's been an interesting transition. Before being named principal, though, I was assistant principal at West Bloomfield High School for nearly 6 years. So the building and the students, not that new to me, which is a good thing. Before that, I was assistant principal at Abbott Middle School in the district for 3 years, and I taught science at Abbott Middle School for the 5 years before that. So I've been around for nearly 15 years in West Bloomfield schools and look to put a lot more time in. Like Dr. Hill said, you know, our plan was to present to you our portrait of a graduate and what it's like to be a learner at West Bloomfield and how those skills and what they learn translates into the next steps for them. And we're going to still give that presentation, but with another twist on it, looking at our remote learning in a cloud setting and what that's like for students and how that's going to look as we move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll have the students introduce themselves here shortly. Dr. Hill, I think you need to enable screen sharing or make me the host in order to do it. And if you're not the host, then Dan, that needs to be you. All right, thank you. All right, and then if you still see a lot of people on the screen and you'd like that to be smaller, there should be a small window with people's faces in it. You can click the single box and it'll just show the active speaker. If you click the 2 lines, that'll show like 5 people at once, so it's up to you how you want that to be arranged. Okay, so again, this is the West Bloomfield High School Student Ambassadors Group, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that is and talk about our portrait of a graduate, all kind of that program and what that means, but also what that looks like in a cloud setting. So I'm going to ask our 4 students to go ahead and unmute themselves, and then we'll go in the order that it is here on the slide. If you could just introduce yourself, you know, what grade you're in, and then like what it means to you to be a student ambassador, that would be great.
Do I go first?
Go ahead, Lexi.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lexi LaFlata. I'm the freshman student ambassador. To be a student ambassador for me, it means to be a leader for everyone in my class, and they look up to me. So I need to be like good role models for them.
Dylan?
Hi, I'm Dylan Tatum. I'm in 10th grade student ambassador at West Bloomfield High School. I just really enjoy being a student ambassador because it gives me the opportunity to lead my grade level and do further things with my school.
Thanks, Dylan. Audrey?
Hi, I'm Audrey. I'm the junior student ambassador. And I think being a student ambassador is a really great opportunity to represent my school to people outside or people in the community. So I think that's really nice.
And then Isaac.
Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Isaac Mintz. I'm a 12th grader, or was, and I absolutely love being able to demonstrate what the West Bloomfield High School can offer the community.
Thanks, Isaac. So the Student Ambassadors group is actually a larger group than the 4 you see here. We were just getting it rolling second semester, and we had up to about 12 students that were selected throughout the building to be representative of their student body and the experience. And these were like the initial 4 that really exemplified true leadership, the culture and the spirit of West Bloomfield High School. And so they're the 4 that are going to be presenting to you today. So I'm going to talk for a little bit before turning it over to the students and introduce you to the West Bloomfield School District's Portrait of a Graduate initiative. So you'll see in the slideshow here, and you may see it in a lot of our communications, these 4 icons, and you'll see it in bold here in the presentation. But those visuals and those words are representative of what it means to be a learner in West Bloomfield. And our Portrait of a Graduate is aiming to push students kind of beyond that academic piece, those rigorous milestones that we put our students through, and then looking at what does it mean to be a graduate? What skills and what lessons are they going to come out of West Bloomfield schools with that may not be measured on a state assessment or may not be measured when applying to colleges, but more so, what does it mean to be a participant in your community in a way that can enhance for others? So what we're doing is we're focused on setting the students up for success by teaching them those interpersonal skills that allow them to approach life's endeavors in a different way. And these are exemplified through the 4 C's: communicator, contributor, collaborator, and critical thinker. We're going to dive into those a little bit more in depth here with the students in a moment. What's important to realize with this is we don't just expect our students to do this, but we teach these competencies, we assess them, and it really requires teachers to incorporate that into their planning and their day-to-day instruction. It also requires our students to interact with one another in a unique way, to produce products, and then to demonstrate masteries in ways that aren't your typical assessment that we think of when we think of school. So in these times, we're also looking at our 5th C, cloud, because we've had to transition this into cloud learning. I'm going to give you a brief timeline of what it looked like in West Bloomfield schools to transition to a remote setting, and then why I believe we've been so successful at it and at the forefront of the state of Michigan in our planning and execution of this plan. So Wednesday, March 11th, we have a committee in our school district called the District Learning Design Team, and that's kind of an instructional leadership team that looks at the Portrait of a Graduate and how we infuse those concepts into the teaching and learning that goes on in the classrooms. We kind of saw the writing on the wall with the approach of the COVID pandemic. So we pivoted in that meeting that was previously scheduled to become a what if ad hoc committee. What if they tell us we can't come back to school? What if we're out for 2 weeks? What if, we have to separate ourselves from our peers for a time? We didn't know what that is, but we took that opportunity then to start to plan, well, what will teachers need to know and what are learners going to be able to do in order to continue learning without interruption? So we made a decision on March 11th to take Friday, March 13th as a de facto snow day or a teacher planning day where we told the students not to come in. And then we had all of our teachers do some just in case planning to prepare ourselves to see what would happen, right? Thursday, March 12th, 1 day later, Governor Whitmer ordered the closure of schools through April 5th. What that meant for West Bloomfield is 2 weeks of instruction plus spring break. So again, we were already planned ahead to provide teachers an opportunity to see what remote learning would look like and to plan through that. And then the evening of March 12th, the night before that, all of a sudden we had to pivot again and provide our teachers with the framework for 2 weeks of remote instruction before spring break. So we look at Friday, March 13th, we had all of our teachers, instructional coaches, support staff, and others together. And we built, planned for, designed, and executed a comprehensive cloud learning plan for the next 2 weeks of instruction. That involved getting all teachers on Google Classroom, getting information communicated out to the community and the students, and then making sure that by Monday, March 16th, we'd have seamless transition to continued instruction without missing a beat. And then lo and behold, on Monday, March 16th, we were able to go to a full-scale implementation of that instructional plan with nearly 95% of students participating day one. We are extremely proud of that. Our typical daily attendance is at or around 95% as it is, so we really didn't miss a beat with keeping our students learning. And I'd like to add in there on that same Monday was the day that I was appointed as principal, or at least in the final interview for it before the board meeting. So yeah, that was a very interesting time transition-wise in the high school, but again, we owe it to a strong team of teachers and learners for this to work. So how did that happen? How were we able to pivot in that short period of time? We look back to those 4 C's concepts that we expect for our graduates. And, in order to teach those and to have those run through our students, our staff has to exemplify it as well. So our staff were flexible and capable of thinking critically about that complex but a defined problem of learning remotely, collaborating with their peers about solutions and pitfalls, then contributing their ideas, having some voice and choice in how we were going to approach this, approaching all the different questions differently, and then really contributing the effort needed to make this work. And then high level of communication of their thinking with multiple modalities, media, and then directly to all of our stakeholders. So what made it successful? That's the students, and you're going to hear from them here in just another slide or two. Our students are empowered to live these 4 C's in their learning in a way that they also have voice and choice in how they're going to approach learning. They were comfortable with the transition, with the technology, to be able to collaborate differently, to be able to critically think about how they're going to look at learning and how they're going to demonstrate mastery. And this occurred seamlessly for our students. And that really goes to show that our students prepared not only academically, but socially and emotionally to really be a strong participant in our educational community, but also in the community at large as we move forward. So we're going to go to the students now. I have kind of a set of questions we're going to run through with them, and I'm going to let them also describe what it's like to be a learner in a remote environment. So we're going to go ahead and start with Lexi. If you could unmute yourself.
Can I just start with the question?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of run through it with you, but I took a quote from one of our previous presentations for each of the students. And so Lexi has a quote there that you can see about what being a critical thinker has taught her, about working with others, about the advantage it gives her. So Lexi, if you want to, can you talk to us about what does it look like being a critical thinker in a classroom?
Got it. Okay. In a classroom, a critical thinker is someone who goes above and beyond the task that they're given. They also not only help themselves with the problem that's going on, but they help the people around them, and they strategize to make sure that everyone understands what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you. And then now looking at it in a cloud environment, what does it look like to be a critical thinker engaging in the online lessons with your teachers?
Yeah, so especially when you're on a Zoom call with your teachers, just asking questions and stuff, because not only clarifying for yourself, but clarifying for the other people on the Zoom call to make sure that they understand. And if you're working one-on-one with a partner on an assignment, just working virtually with it and making sure that both people understand what's going on.
So what's the biggest difference for you transitioning from a classroom setting to a remote setting?
Just honestly not having the teacher in front of me, because I'm the type of student that likes to ask a lot of questions, especially in math. So I'll be on a Zoom call and my math teacher, he'll be explaining the assignment, and I like to ask a lot of questions. It's just not the same though, because normally my math teacher would get out a whiteboard and show me an example problem, and he really can't do that on a Zoom. But they do these screen castifies every week where he takes a video of himself doing example problems, and then he sends it out to the class, and it really helps with the worksheets that he assigns for us.
Awesome. So what have you learned about being a critical thinker and how you approach those complex problems that you're going to be able to take with you as you move on through school?
I think using those 4 C's, especially critical thinker in my life, gives me that extra advantage, especially when I'm out in the real world when I'm older, because it has given me the opportunity to look at a situation and just automatically think the best solution for it. And I can help people around me, and it's easier.
Awesome. Thank you, Lexi. And again, remember that is a freshman, everybody. So nice job, Lexi. We're going to move on to Dylan. Dylan's going to talk about being a collaborator today. You'll see his quote there about being able to create new and unique products within a group by relying on group members' ideas, your own ideas, and navigating those conflicts that typically arise to produce something new. So Dylan, can you talk to us about what it looks like to be a collaborator in our classrooms? And you might have to get a little closer. We had trouble hearing you earlier.
Okay, all right. Basically on the quote says collaborator work with others successfully and kindly with while creating new and unique products within the group. basically giving you the options of hearing everyone's opinions on the product that is being made, and it will like help you with your thinking after high school, also with others in jobs and college.
All right. So now that we've moved out of the classroom setting where you have your peers right next to you, and engaging in those collaborative opportunities that teachers give you, what does it look like to be a collaborator while we're working remotely from our own homes?
To be a collaborator at home, like we get documents from our teachers and we get peer editing. So we send that when we get done with our project, we'll send it to one of our other classmates and they'll look over it too. And it's just taking opinions from each classmate and using your teacher to your advantage to like look at your document, make sure it's all fine, and you get to turn it in with everyone's opinion on it.
Awesome. And then I'm going to ask the same question I asked Lexi. What is the biggest difference that you see between the classroom as you knew it before March 12th and what it looks like now in the remote environment when it comes to collaboration?
For me, like, I don't get the chance to talk to my teacher every day about my assignments, and over the computer is like a little bit more difficult to remember your assignments during the day and to also get everything done. But it's working out pretty fine though.
Okay. And then what about being a collaborator do you think you've grown in that you're going to be able to take with you as you move forward?
I feel like with these collaboration like tools that I've learned during high school, my 2 years of high school, I feel like I'll be able to take it to a job or into a sport that I play, because as you grow up, you're always going to work with others, and if you don't work with others successfully, the goal that you're trying to complete is not going to be fulfilled.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. And you got to remember Dylan is one of our sophomores. We're going to move forward to Isaac, talking about being a contributor. So you can see Isaac's quote there. Again, I'm not going to really read it to you, but more just kind of give you the summary where Isaac, his whole purpose, and I'm sure he'll explain it to you, is to be able to give back and find unique ways to do it. So Dylan, can you talk to us about what it means to be a contributor?
Yeah, Mr. Pace, for sure. So what I really admire about the West Bloomfield High School learning model is that, especially with given the current scenario, but in a classroom, right? What does it mean to be a contributor? So what's really awesome in West Bloomfield High School is that a lot of the teachers are receptive to ideas. And, while my quote really highlights, what we want for the future, I also want to say that, obviously we want a meaningful and fulfilling career, but at the same time, we also want to give back and make a difference in our community. So in our classrooms, we have obviously the educational instruction, and then there's the application. So I really think that at the end of the day, in a classroom, we take the information that we realize, okay, so for me, I really connect to civics because I love public service. So with my class, with Mrs. Chase, last year we ran a mock election, and that was really something that it required to bring together and use all 4 of the C's to say, okay, how can we give back to our school community? And from that, we actually are alongside a team. I helped create a food drive this year, which was really just a fun experience. And going forward, I really want to take that experience and use that in my future careers, and of course, taking that into college as well.
Awesome. So what does it look like now to be a contributor when you're not able to get out and do some of the service opportunities that you've been able to do before?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that has been really innovative and unique has been group Google Documents and group Google Slides. So what that means is, okay, so a teacher will give us a prompt or give us a question, an assignment, and we ultimately as a class will provide our insight on this prompt. So I've done this in my literature classes when we were analyzing poems, and I've actually had I've taken a look at some of my sister's work where she's been doing that in math and literature as well. So it's really, my sister is a freshman, by the way, so we're really covering the board here when it comes to being a contributor in a cloud environment. And one thing to realize is that, this is really just the beginning, and I can't imagine how it's going to continue. And I mean, the administrative team and our teachers have been doing a great job, and as well as our students, because it's really a team effort here. And I mean, I can't imagine what it's like on the administrative end, but yeah, thank you guys for that too.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. And Isaac's senior representative. So Isaac, what are your plans considering, everything goes as planned in the fall? What are your plans for the fall?
Yeah, so I will be a rising freshman at U of M. I'm looking at a couple different majors. One is kind of more service-based, and the other is more like psychology research-based. So at the end of the day, it's like, okay, how can I make a difference? And that's really all I care about. So
Awesome. Thank you, Isaac.
for sure.
We're going to move forward now to Audrey. Audrey, is going to talk to us about being a communicator, but I can't help but highlight her work as a contributor. She has been leading the efforts to try and get some of our unused science goggles in West Bloomfield schools to some of our first responders, and single-handedly spearheading the effort. So thank you for that, Audrey. But why don't you talk to us about what it means to be a communicator in our classrooms and educational environment at WBHS?
Yeah, so you can see from the quote there that in general, communicating just means participating in discussion with other group members, talking about questions. So in a classroom environment, you can see communication with the flexible furniture that we just put in. So when you're having multiple people sitting at tables and desks instead of the traditional array of, just single desks that we used to have, it's extremely easy for your teachers to just turn around and say, go ahead and talk with your classmates about what we've been discussing. So that's a really good way to facilitate communication. And we also do Socratic seminars. So going all the way back to the philosopher Socrates and putting that in our classrooms today. So there is an equal amount of time that teachers spend, going over lectures and notes, and also providing time for us to discuss with each other. So yeah.
Awesome. And then what does that look like remotely? Communication, a lot of times it's body language, face-to-face, a lot of communication that is kind of implied and inherent. So what does a communicator do in a remote environment?
So I think communication, even, the process transitioning to a cloud environment has been such a huge part. Actually, just before this, I was in a meeting with a junior at the University of Michigan, and I just introduced myself to her. I told her, oh, I go to West Bloomfield High School. And she was like, oh, didn't you guys just talk about what your plans were going to be for the fall? And I thought it was so incredible that she just knew that. I mean, she's in college. I don't even know what high school she went to, but it's clear that the communication efforts from our district have been extremely successful. And that's a huge part of why we were able to move so quickly into the cloud environment. And from a student perspective, teachers are doing everything they can to continue that communication. So we still have Zoom calls where we're able to see our teachers face to face and ask them questions as if we were in a classroom. And even outside of Zoom calls, I know that my teachers are always just an email away, and they're always there for me to reach out to, whether it's about school or mental health, which has also been a really large priority for this transition. And I think that's really nice.
So Audrey, instead of asking what have you learned that you're able to use in life as a communicator, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your experience communicating your plan and your research at the state science fair level, and how these skills help lend you to that success that you found.
Yeah, sure. So recently, I believe at the beginning of March, so kind of before the world ended, I participated in the Science and Engineering Fair of Metro Detroit. And it's essentially everything you think a science fair is, just students participating with different science, math, and engineering-based projects. My project was in the translational medicine category. in the future, I'd like to be a doctor. So shout out to all the doctors in the call. But yeah, so my project basically looked at an alternative treatment for pain. So instead of relying on painkillers and medications, can we use genetic therapy, and can we regulate gene expression to actually control how sensitive people are to pain? So it's a long series of interviews talking with many, many different judges. So that day I was definitely using my communication skills. I must have given at least 18 interviews. But yeah, so I earned first in my category. I moved on to the Michigan Science and Engineering Fair, where I got second place, and I was also chosen as a finalist for the International Science and Engineering Fair. So my communication skills, thank you. So my communication skills really helped me, and in the future, that's especially important for me personally going into medicine. It's not always about the science, it's not always about being behind the scenes, but a lot of it is about communicating with patients and your colleagues. How can you effectively convey your ideas to them? And I think that also applies no matter what career anyone is in. It's a crucial skill to be able to take what's in your head and put it out there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Audrey. Congratulations. Again, Audrey is our junior representative.
Thank you.
So we'll end it by talking about what is it going to look like in West Bloomfield moving forward. And if you've seen us in the media lately, or we just had a town hall forum or a webinar this morning and last night, we've created an instructional roadmap with 3 different learning models for the fall of 2020 that we can kind of implement as we learn more about recommendations and what school may look like, and pivot quickly to be able to adapt that for our students. So what it does, it takes into consideration those key facets for a safe return that you've seen published elsewhere, and also relies upon these interpersonal and kind of relational skills of our staff and students in order to best leverage that into strong learning opportunities. I'll finalize the conversation here with why these are important to us. For us, we don't want to create learners that are only good at taking tests, that are only able to demonstrate mastery in ways, that are measurable, numeric, documented ways of saying, I learned this. It's very important, and we believe our students are very successful in that. But in addition, we want to create opportunities for students to be able to communicate, to think critically, and to really approach complex problems that are impacting us as a society right away when they walk out our doors. And, the skills that they learn from us in this global world that we have, where everybody's interconnected, are going to make them really strong contributors to whatever organization, school, job, or just their family that they're a part of. So, our students, we believe, when they walk out the doors as a graduate, not only do we confer their diplomas as being someone who met all the academic criteria, but they're students and then now citizens and adults in this world that are going to be able to contribute right off the bat. So I want to thank you for your time. We're here. So if you have any questions or comments you'd like to share with us, we're happy to respond to that.
If whoever's radio is in the background, mute yourself.
But you better have a mask on because we're going to take action. Now I know.
Here we go. Okay, at this point, it would be, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Pace and all 4 of you students for sharing your experiences with us. And I'm sure that some club members may have a question or a comment. So if you do, sort of raise your hand and show it, and then you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Oh, Cindy Hill.
This was great. Thank you for coming. So can one of you students let us know if there's any positives that have come out of this new learning environment from you, for you personally, from your standpoint? Is there any benefit to the cloud learning as opposed to being in school every day in person, besides not having to get up and get to school at 7?
Yeah, I would say that is definitely the number one thing that has come out of this. Um, there's like clear research showing how bad sleep deprivation is, and granted, uh, students are responsible for getting to bed on time. However, when naturally, like, students just have a very difficult time waking up at like 5:45. I mean, I'm not a morning person, but I will say, aside from the health benefits, I will say that having your own schedule is truly awesome. I mean, this is an opportunity for kids to learn how they operate and to learn who they are and how they can plan their day. And that's pretty invaluable because, when you go to school, you have a set schedule. Okay, first period, third period, so on. Now now you have to say, okay, now students, you have the balls in your court. You need to do these assignments. I think that's really valuable. While you might need to say, okay, Jimmy, why didn't you turn in that assignment last week? That happens in school as well. We can't let that go unseen. So I think that this is truly, like, while this is a rough experience socially, students are in their homes. That's not natural for them. I will say that we are adaptable, we're malleable, and we can work through this.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you, Isaac.
Any other students want to respond to that question?
I think it's right now.
Dr. Hill, you're muted if you were trying to.
Does anybody else have another question they would want to ask or a comment about the program or a question for the students? Go ahead, Raman, unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It's a pretty amazing time to be in school. My question for the students was, and I think this has happened to a lot of adults during this time, a lot of our regular activities have been curtailed, and I'm assuming that the same thing has happened to you, whether you're doing sports or other things. And do you find, I know you're very young to be making these kind of reflections, but do you find that you have reprioritized, that maybe when this is all over, you're going to try to make yourself less busy, or are you going to go back to being as busy as before with your in-school and out-of-school activities, or do you have any comments on that?
I can talk a bit about that. So usually when school's in session, I'm extremely busy. I have lots of extracurriculars to balance with my homework and obviously getting enough sleep. And a lot of times my mental and my physical health are the ones that really get put on the back burner. My sophomore year, I had an extremely heavy course load, and it started to really take a toll on both aspects of my health. So with this new transition to cloud learning, obviously I've been able to get more sleep and, manage things. Attending things online is always a lot easier, but also I've seen the drastic improvement in my physical and my emotional condition. So yeah, definitely when things return to normal or as close to normal as they can be, I will most definitely be putting more emphasis on going, out for those daily walks and getting enough sleep every night. So yeah, that's it for me.
Dylan, maybe you can speak to your experience a little bit. For those who don't know, Dylan's very humble about it. He is in the class of 2022. He is the number 5 overall football recruit in the state of Michigan, number 1 running back recruit, who plays a lot of other positions as well. So he's being highly sought after by many of the top universities in the country. So Dylan, can you talk a little bit about that, the workouts, the planning for that, and balancing that with school life during this time?
Basically,
Sounds like Dylan might be a little frozen, which
with me, I have to give them frozen. Can you hear me now?
a little bit. Try one more time. Maybe we will, unfortunately, not be able to get Dylan's response. Dylan, maybe you could type something in the chat, or if you share it with me, I can share it back out to the group at a later time, okay?
Okay, we have time. We have time for one more question or comment. Anybody?
Ma'am?
I just wanted to say kudos to the students. They're very impressive. And also congratulations to Dr. Hill and Eric Pace for taking charge during this unprecedented challenge. And I think that it's really shining a positive light on West Bloomfield and our school district as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. And I know Dr. Hill and the students do as well. I agree. I couldn't thank the students enough. It never hurts to bring some really talented students along to help you look good. So I appreciate them. I want to thank you all for continuing to meet. What you do is important. And it's amazing to see people from literally the other side of the globe, in addition to those that are right here in our backyard coming together for these meetings. I want to thank you for your time, for bearing with me. I'm in my kids' play area in the basement because they are doing learning upstairs while my wife has her teacher PLC meeting at the same time. So it's very loud. I haven't cut my hair or beard in 2 months with the quarantine. I was trying to like make that last. And now it's a challenge I don't know if I can back down from or if I really need to. But, you know, thank you for dealing with that part of me. But truly, I'm really happy to share our message. I'm very proud of the work that our students do and that our district's doing. So thank you.
And I'm going to echo what Mr. Pace just said. And first of all, I want to thank each of the students. And one clear message that I'm getting out of this, and actually we have been doing a lot of thinking about it, is the start time for students. And I agree with the student assessment that 7:04 or 7:03, whatever the start time is in the morning, it is way too early for adolescents. That doesn't fit into the biological or sleep patterns. And so we will definitely, as a school district, take a serious look at that start time and adjust it to a more sane start time. One of the advantages of having time to re-examine everything we do is that we have the time to do it right now. And yes, we're in sort of a crisis mode and we're doing some planning for an uncertain future. But when you hear and see the students that we've had as guests today, and we know they represent all of the students in West Bloomfield and really across the nation, I think our future is in great hands. It's incumbent upon us as adults to get it right and do whatever we can to ensure that we have a great learning experience for all. And